Good evening, dear listeners. Throughout the vast tapestry of human history, few figures capture our imagination quite like the warrior. From ancient battlefields to medieval conflicts, the image of the noble fighter standing against overwhelming odds has become deeply embedded in our collective consciousness. The story of warriors across civilizations reveals not just tales of combat and conquest, but windows into the very soul of humanity's struggle for survival, meaning, and purpose. Throughout the ages, as we settle into this peaceful moment together, let us journey back through time to explore the fascinating history behind the warrior. Those individuals who shaped the course of nations and whose legacy continues to influence our understanding of courage, honor, and sacrifice. The concept of the warrior emerged independently across virtually all human societies, speaking to a fundamental aspect of our shared experience. Archaeological evidence suggests that specialized fighters existed as early as 10,000 BCE, when human communities began transitioning from nomadic lifestyles to settled agricultural societies. This transition created the need for protection of valuable resources and territory, giving birth to the earliest warrior classes. Cave paintings from this period depict ritualized combat and hunting scenes, suggesting that even in prehistoric times, the role of the warrior was already becoming codified and honored within social structures. These early warriors utilized simple weapons crafted from stone, wood, and bone. Yet their impact on protecting and expanding their communities was immense and laid the groundwork for future military developments. The ancient world saw the evolution of the warrior into increasingly specialized and formalized roles. In Mesopotamia, often considered the cradle of civilization, we find some of the earliest documented professional soldiers around 3000 BCE, serving in the armies of city-states like Ur and Uruk. These early professional warriors represented a significant societal shift, as they dedicated their lives exclusively to the art of combat, rather than dividing their time between farming and occasional fighting. The Egyptian New Kingdom period introduced another revolution in warrior culture with the emergence of chariot warfare around 1600 BCE, creating an elite warrior class that required extensive training and resources. Similarly, in ancient China, during the Shang dynasty, aristocratic warriors commanded bronze weapons and sophisticated tactics that required years of dedicated practice, separating them from common soldiers and elevating their status within society. Perhaps no ancient warriors have captured the modern imagination quite like the Spartans of ancient Greece. From childhood, Spartan boys were removed from their families and subjected to the agoge, an intensely rigorous training system designed to produce the perfect warrior. This extreme dedication to martial excellence created a society entirely oriented around military prowess, where the warrior ethos permeated every aspect of daily life. Across the Mediterranean, the Roman legionary represented a different model of warrior excellence, based not on individual heroism, but on disciplined teamwork and standardized tactics. The success of the Roman legionary demonstrated how organized warfare could ultimately triumph over individual warrior prowess. As Rome's citizen soldiers conquered territories from Britain to Egypt through superior discipline, engineering, and organizational skills rather than through superior individual combat ability. In the Eastern world, warrior traditions developed along distinctive philosophical and spiritual paths. The samurai of Japan lived by the Bushido Code, a complex, ethical system emphasizing not just martial skill but loyalty, honor, and self-discipline. Similarly, Indian warrior castes operated under dharmic principles that integrated spiritual purpose with martial duty, while Chinese military traditions were deeply influenced by Confucian values of loyalty and Taoist concepts of harmony and strategy. These Eastern warrior traditions stand as powerful examples of how the role of the fighter expanded beyond mere combat expertise to encompass philosophical and spiritual dimensions. Unlike their Western counterparts, who often focused primarily on physical prowess and tactical advantage, many Eastern warrior traditions explicitly sought to cultivate both inner and outer strength. Viewing character development as inseparable from combat training, the medieval period witnessed a remarkable evolution in warrior culture, particularly in Europe, where the knight emerged as the dominant martial figure. These heavily armored horsemen represented not just military innovation, but an entire social class with distinct values and customs. The concept of chivalry, which developed around the 11th century, transformed the brutal reality of medieval warfare by adding layers of religious devotion, courtly manners, and codes of honor to the warrior's responsibilities. Knights were expected to protect the weak, serve the church, and display courtesy even to enemies. Though historical reality often fell short of these ideals, the Crusades further complicated this picture by adding religious fervor to military conquest, creating war like the Knights Templar who combined martial skill with monastic discipline. These military orders represented a unique experiment in warrior culture, as they balanced the seemingly contradictory demands of Christian humility with the violent necessities of medieval warfare. While European knights dominated Western imaginations, other remarkable warrior cultures flourished across the globe during the same period. The Mongol horsemen under Genghis Khan created the largest contiguous land empire in history through superior mobility, discipline, and innovative tactics. Unlike knights who often fought for personal glory, Mongol warriors operated within a meritocratic system where skill and loyalty determined rank rather than birth. In Africa, the kingdom of Dahomey developed one of history's most unusual military innovations with its all-female Agaji warriors, commonly known as the Dahomey Amazons. By European observers, these female fighters, who served as the king's elite bodyguard from the 17th to 19th centuries, defied conventional gender roles and fought with remarkable ferocity against colonial powers. Their existence demonstrates how warrior cultures could sometimes transcend traditional social boundaries when military necessity demanded fresh approaches to combat. Indigenous warrior traditions across the Americas, despite technological disadvantages, developed sophisticated martial cultures that emphasized spiritual preparation, environmental mastery, and guerrilla tactics. Plains Indian warriors underwent vision quests and purification rituals before battle, believing that spiritual power was as important as physical prowess. The Aztec jaguar and eagle warriors combined religious devotion with martial excellence, climbing through strictly defined ranks based on battlefield accomplishments. When facing European invaders with superior technology, many Native American fighters adapted innovative resistance strategies, utilizing their superior knowledge of local terrain and conditions. The Apache, for instance, developed guerrilla warfare techniques so effective that the United States Army required tens of thousands of troops and decades of effort to subdue a few hundred warriors. These indigenous traditions highlight how warrior cultures often developed unique approaches based on their specific environmental and social contexts. The modern era has witnessed both the decline of traditional warrior classes and the transformation of warrior values into new forms. Professional military forces now emphasize teamwork, technological expertise, and psychological resilience rather than individual combat prowess. Special forces units like Navy SEALs or British SAS perhaps come closest to embodying traditional warrior virtues, combining physical toughness with adaptability and specialized skills. Outside formal military structures, martial arts traditions preserve ancient warrior knowledge while reorienting it toward personal development rather than battlefield application. Japanese disciplines like Aikido or Kendo maintain samurai techniques and philosophies but emphasize spiritual growth over combat effectiveness. Meanwhile, popular culture continues to romanticize historical warriors through films, games, and literature, often projecting contemporary values onto historical figures. This cultural fascination suggests that even in our technological age, something about the warrior archetype continues to resonate deeply with human psychology and our understanding of courage, discipline, and purpose. The psychological dimensions of warrior cultures reveal fascinating insights into human nature and social organization. Throughout history, warriors have utilized various mental techniques to overcome the natural human aversion to violence and fear of death. The Viking berserkers reportedly entered trance-like states before battle, possibly through combinations of ritual, alcohol, and psychoactive substances, allowing them to fight with supernatural courage and pain resistance. Similarly, Japanese samurai practiced meditation techniques derived from Zen Buddhism to achieve mushin, or no mind, a state of mental clarity free from fear or hesitation. Modern military forces continue this tradition through psychological conditioning techniques designed to manage fear and maintain unit cohesion under extreme stress. Initiation rituals for warriors across cultures share remarkable similarities despite developing independently, suggesting common psychological needs in preparing individuals for combat roles. These rites typically involved elements of isolation, physical hardship, symbolic death and rebirth, and formal recognition by the community. Among the Maasai of East Africa, young men traditionally had to hunt a lion with only a spear to prove their readiness for warrior status. Native American Plains tribes often required vision quests where adolescents would fast alone in the wilderness until receiving spiritual guidance. Modern military boot camps continue this tradition through intense physical challenges, head shaving, uniform clothing, and graduation ceremonies that symbolically transform civilians into warriors. These ritualized transitions appear to serve important psychological functions, helping individuals accept new identities and preparing them mentally for the extreme demands of warfare. The relationship between warriors and their weapons reveals much about how different cultures understood combat and courage. For many warrior traditions, weapons were not merely tools but extensions of the self imbued with spiritual significance. Japanese swords were believed to contain the samurai's soul, while Viking warriors named their favorite weapons and included them in funeral arrangements. Native American warriors performed blessing ceremonies for their bows and war clubs, while medieval knights had their swords blessed by priests. This intimate connection between warrior and weapon stemmed partly from practical necessity, as survival depended on intimate familiarity with one's equipment, but also reflected deeper beliefs about identity and power. Even in modern military contexts, soldiers often develop strong attachments to their primary weapons, suggesting this psychological connection transcends specific cultural contexts and speaks to something fundamental in the warrior experience. Across time and place, the tension between individual heroism and collective discipline represents one of the most consistent themes in warrior history. Early warrior cultures often celebrated the individual champion who could turn the tide of battle through personal prowess, as exemplified by figures like Achilles in Greek tradition or the heroes of Norse sagas. However, as warfare grew more complex, most successful military systems shifted toward emphasizing coordination and teamwork over individual glory. The Roman legionary system purposefully discouraged individual heroics in favor of maintaining formation integrity, while the Greek phalanx depended entirely on each hoplite standing shoulder to shoulder with his neighbors. This historical trend toward collective discipline accelerated with the introduction of firearms and continues in modern military doctrine, where synchronized action typically proves more effective than individual brilliance. Nevertheless, the cultural appeal of the lone warrior hero remains powerful in our stories and myths, perhaps reflecting a deep human admiration for individual courage. Even as military reality increasingly prioritizes teamwork, warriors throughout history have often occupied ambiguous social positions, simultaneously revered for their protective role, yet feared for their capacity for violence. In medieval Japan, Samurai possessed the legal right to execute commoners who showed disrespect, creating a relationship of both protection and terror between warrior and civilian populations. European knights similarly embodied both chivalric ideals and the brutal realities of feudal power enforcement. This social ambiguity continues in modern contexts, where military personnel are honored for their service yet often experience difficulty reintegrating into civilian society. After combat deployments, the warrior's necessary familiarity with violence creates a psychological and social boundary that many societies have struggled to navigate, developing elaborate customs, laws, and rituals to both honor warriors and contain their potentially disruptive force. Religious traditions often played crucial roles in this process, providing ethical frameworks and purification rituals that helped warriors transition between the extraordinary circumstances of combat and the ordinary requirements of community life. The lasting legacy of historical warrior cultures extends far beyond military history, profoundly influencing modern concepts of leadership, ethics, and personal development. Corporate training programs frequently invoke samurai wisdom or Sun Tzu's strategic principles, while sports psychology draws upon warrior mindset techniques to develop mental toughness in athletes. Even modern educational philosophies sometimes incorporate elements from warrior traditions, emphasizing perseverance, discipline, and resilience as core values. The widespread practice of martial arts for personal development rather than combat effectiveness represents perhaps the most direct continuation of warrior traditions in contemporary life. Disciplines like karate, kung fu, and Brazilian jiu-jitsu preserve ancient combat techniques while reorienting them toward goals of self-improvement, mental discipline, and spiritual growth. This transformation of warrior knowledge into peacetime applications demonstrates how these traditions contained wisdom that transcended their original martial contexts. The psychological impact of combat on warriors themselves represents one of history's most consistent yet often overlooked aspects of warrior culture. Ancient civilizations recognized what we now call post-traumatic stress, with Mesopotamian texts describing soldiers haunted by battle memories and Greek historians noting psychological casualties alongside physical ones. Indigenous cultures worldwide developed purification ceremonies for returning warriors, recognizing that exposure to violence created spiritual contamination requiring community healing. Modern understanding of combat trauma has become more clinical, but confirms what traditional societies intuited, that warfare affects the human psyche in profound and lasting ways. The challenges faced by veterans reintegrating into society remain remarkably consistent across centuries, suggesting that despite enormous technological changes in warfare, the fundamental psychological experience of combat has remained relatively constant throughout human history. This continuity provides valuable perspective on contemporary approaches to veteran care and rehabilitation. Women warriors, though often marginalized in historical accounts, have participated in combat roles across numerous cultures and time periods. Beyond the famous examples like Joan of Arc or the Japanese Onibagesha female samurai, archaeological evidence increasingly reveals that women participated in warfare more frequently than previously acknowledged. Recent examination of Viking burial sites has confirmed that some high-status warriors buried with weapons and honors were biologically female, challenging long-standing assumptions about strictly gendered combat roles in Norse society. The historical record suggests that when military necessity demanded additional fighters, gender restrictions often relaxed, with women taking up arms during sieges, rebellions, or when communities faced existential threats. These historical precedents provide important context for modern developments in military gender integration, suggesting that women's participation in combat represents not a radical innovation, but a return to capabilities demonstrated throughout human history under various circumstances. The philosophical systems developed within warrior traditions offer profound insights into human existence that extend far beyond combat applications. The Japanese concept of Bushido emphasized that confronting death directly leads to fuller appreciation of life, while Native American warrior traditions viewed courage not merely as battlefield valor, but as spiritual strength applicable to all life challenges. Chinese military philosopher Sun Tzu's emphasis on achieving victory through understanding rather than force influenced not just warfare but approaches to conflict resolution across many domains. These warrior philosophies often addressed universal, human questions about mortality, ethical action under duress, and balancing individual desires with community